Welcome back to another Explainer. Today we're taking a deep dive into a really complex history to understand the forces that shaped our modern world. So I want you to picture this. It's dawn. Early morning mist is just hanging over the Potomac landscape, right? And then the sunlight cuts through the haze, revealing this massive, sprawling structure. We are, of course, talking about the Pentagon. It's an absolute architectural marvel and a literal global icon. But the secret history of how it actually came to be and what has gone down inside its walls, it is an absolutely fascinating story. Let's dive in.
17. That is just a staggering number. Inside this enormous structure, there are literally 17 miles of corridors. I mean, think about that for a second. It's an absolute labyrinth. The Pentagon isn't just a building, it's practically a sprawling, interconnected city. Now, what's really interesting about this is that despite its massive size, the unique concentric layout actually allows you to walk between any 2 points in the entire building in under 7 minutes. Kind of mind-blowing, right? Over the decades, those efficiently designed 17 miles of hallways have basically become one of the most recognizable symbols of American military power in the world.
But that brings us to the ultimate question, doesn't it? Why a Pentagon? I want you to really ponder this central mystery. Out of all the geometric shapes available to architects and engineers, why go with a massive, five-sided structure? Well, to figure that out, we've got to rewind the clock a bit and look at exactly what America was facing before a single drop of concrete was ever poured. So, the situation in the late 1930s? It was practically chaotic. America's military leadership wasn't operating out of one slick, unified command center like you might expect today. Nope. They were inefficiently scattered across dozens of crowded Washington, D.C. government offices. You literally had military planners stuffed into cramped rooms with maps plastering every inch of the desks and walls. Meanwhile, clerks and telephone operators are just rushing through these busy, completely disconnected corridors. As global tensions started to rise, the need for a centralized headquarters to actually coordinate strategy became, well, incredibly obvious.
Okay, let's dive into this. By 1940, the world was totally on edge. World War II was already consuming Europe and Asia, and American military planners knew the United States might soon face a conflict on a scale never before seen in human history. To prepare for that, they desperately needed speed, they needed efficiency, and most importantly, they needed a unified place to plan. The search for a massive new headquarters was officially on.
All right, let's solve our architectural mystery. The surprising, totally functional truth behind the famous shape is that the five-sided design wasn't chosen just because some architect wanted it to look distinct or mysterious from the sky. It was entirely pragmatic. The original design was actually dictated by the roads and the bizarre, asymmetrical property boundaries of the proposed construction site, a place known as Arlington Farms. Engineers essentially just drew lines that hugged those boundaries to maximize efficient land use. So this iconic geometry, it was born purely out of necessity.
Once that design was locked in, the execution was nothing short of miraculous. Construction kicked off in the early 1940s and moved at just extraordinary speed. Thousands of workers operating in this massive cloud of dust and ambition got right to work pouring massive concrete foundations and raising immense steel reinforcements. Layer after layer, they connected those 5 enormous sides in that incredibly complex network of corridors. They literally turned an ambitious architectural drawing into one of the largest office buildings on Earth in record time.
Barely a year after breaking ground, in 1942, the Pentagon officially opens as the new center of military administration, and the timing here was absolutely crucial. America was now fully engaged in World War II, and its military leadership desperately needed that unified command center we talked about. The building was ready exactly when the country needed it the most.
You can only imagine, inside those newly built walls, the atmosphere was just electric. The monumental task at hand, coordinating World War II. We are talking about planning operations on a truly unprecedented scale. Picture vast rooms with massive maps covering the walls, officers intently studying troop movements, clerks shuffling mountains of paper, and telephone operators furiously connecting the dots between theaters in North America, Europe, Africa, and the Pacific. The entire global war effort was being orchestrated right here.
But of course, history didn't just stop in 1945. When World War II ended, the Pentagon's role evolved as we transitioned straight into the Cold War. The nature of America's military challenge simply changed, right? It went from fighting a hot war to managing a massive global strategic rivalry against the Soviet sphere. So those bright, bustling war rooms transitioned into darker, much more intense planning rooms. The focus shifted to early Cold War-era aircraft, radar installations, civil defense imagery,
and the frankly terrifying realities of the new nuclear era.
Then, as we move into the 1960s, the focus shifted again toward a highly turbulent era. Decisions crafted deep inside the Pentagon's planning rooms directly shaped the military supply routes and operations for the Vietnam War. From these air-conditioned corridors in Washington, incredibly complex strategies were developed for a war in the distant jungles of Southeast Asia. And as we know, this was a conflict that would become one of the most highly debated and controversial in American history.
And that controversy eventually spilled directly out of the building's own filing cabinets. In the early 1970s, a massive collection of classified studies about America's involvement in Vietnam was leaked to the public. These, of course, became known as the Pentagon Papers. Their publication completely shocked the nation. It triggered a profound national debate over government secrecy, brought intense scrutiny to military decision-making, and ignited historic legal battles over freedom of the press. For the institution, it was undeniably a defining moment.
Fast forward to the 1990s. The Cold War is finally over, and once again, the military has to adapt. This post-Cold War era brought about a rapidly changing world. Inside, the Pentagon was integrating early computer networks and advanced satellite imagery to navigate a totally new landscape, one that was focused heavily on international peacekeeping operations. So while the building remained visually constant on the outside, inside, the technology and the mission were transforming at lightning speed.
Then came a day that changed everything. On the calm morning of September 11, 2001, the Pentagon transformed from a command center into a target. It was struck in a devastating terrorist attack, part of the largest attack of its kind in American history. Emergency responders rushed to the scene as the very walls that had coordinated decades of global defense were brutally breached.
That morning, the attack killed 184 people, both at the Pentagon and aboard American Airlines Flight 77. In the aftermath of such an unimaginable tragedy, there was a profound sense of resilience. The damaged sections of the building were carefully, meticulously repaired, but the site itself was forever changed. The Pentagon Memorial was created to permanently and peacefully enshrine the memory of those who lost their lives. Today, it stands right alongside the massive structure, ensuring that the human cost of that day is never, ever forgotten.
And this brilliantly illustrates where we are today. The Pentagon remains the enormous beating heart of the United States Department of Defense. It's a massive hub for secure communications, real-time strategic analysis, and the coordination of global defense activities across our rapidly changing, highly digital world. Literally, from this single five-sided complex, modern global defense is being managed every single second of the day.
When you take a step back and really look at the last 8 decades, it is just incredible. The Pentagon has been a silent witness to history, from that frantic World War II planning in 1942, right through the tense Cold War rivalry, the intense complexities of the Vietnam War and the Pentagon Papers, the tragedy of September 11, all the way up to modern global defense today. It has anchored American history through some of its most consequential moments.
So what is the big takeaway here? Well, the Pentagon began simply as an ambitious wartime headquarters, born purely out of necessity. But over 80 years, those concrete walls evolved into something far, far larger. It became the ultimate symbol of American military power, of strategy, secrecy, sacrifice, and history. It is a structure that is entirely woven into the fabric of the modern world.
I want to leave you with this final thought. The world is changing faster than ever, and the nature of conflict is shifting. It's moving into cyberspace, artificial intelligence, and beyond. So as global threats continue to evolve, what will the next 8 decades demand of these 5 walls? It's a pretty fascinating question to consider. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this deep dive gave you a totally new perspective on one of the world's most famous buildings. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.